3 months after my daughter told me I would always have a room in my own house, her husband would sit across a lawyer's desk and learn that the deed he had recorded so carefully carried nothing he believed it did. But it started at my own kitchen table, with a pen in my hand and a tuna casserole cooling on the counter that no one touched. "You don't need your name on everything anymore, Mum," Diane said, sliding the papers toward me. "Let us carry the house for you now. That's what family is for." Gregory smiled the way he smiles, warm on the outside, measured underneath. He set his pen down beside mine like we were partners. I looked at the casserole I'd made, because the movers were coming, and I thought people got hungry during a move. Nobody had made room for it. It just sat there, going cold under the plastic wrap, steam fogging the inside of the dish, and then giving up. My name is Margaret Ellison. I was 71 that spring. My husband Raymond had been gone 2 years, and the house on Delmore Street had been ours for 38 of them. The one with the crooked porch step he kept meaning to fix, and the walnut tree he planted the year Diane was born. Diane and Gregory had come to me in February. Money was tight, they said. Rent was a sin these days. If they moved in with me, they could save for a place of their own, help me with the yard, keep me company. It made sense. It's the kind of thing that makes sense right up until you're holding a pen you don't remember agreeing to hold. "It's just refinance paperwork," Gregory said. "Lower the payment, put us on the account so we can help with the bills. Standard stuff, Margaret. I do this for a living." He did do it for a living. That was the part I would think about later. I signed where he pointed. 3 places, then a 4th. I did not read every page, because it was late, and my daughter was in my kitchen, and I wanted, more than I wanted, to be careful, to believe that this was love arriving to save some money. Gregory gathered the papers into a blue folder, snapped it shut, and took it with him down the hall. He never gave me a copy. I noticed that. I told myself I'd ask for one. Raymond used to date and initial the corner of every document he ever touched. "A surveyor's habit, a paper without a date, is a rumor," he'd say. I remember thinking, as Gregory carried that blue folder away, that not one page on my table had a date in the corner. I put the casserole in the refrigerator and turned off the kitchen light. I did not know yet what I had signed. But I knew the sound my own house had just made the sound of a room, deciding I was a guest in it. I told myself a story that spring, the way we do. "They're busy, they're stressed, it's an adjustment for everybody." I said those words to the walnut tree while I watered it, and the tree, at least, didn't argue. There were 3 moments I kept folding up small and putting away. The first was the coffee. I'd made coffee in that kitchen every morning for 38 years. One Tuesday, I came down and Diane had rearranged the whole cabinet, my mugs boxed up on the top shelf, her set where mine used to be. "We just needed a system that works for the household," she said. She called it the household like it was a company, and I was a former employee they were being nice to. The second was the thermostat. Gregory installed one of those app-controlled ones and didn't give me the app. When I was cold, I learned to ask. A woman who paid the heating bill in that house for 4 decades, learning to ask if she could be warm. The third was the porch. My friend Nancy from church came by on a Sunday, and Diane met her at the door and said I was resting. I wasn't, and that maybe it was better to call ahead now, with the household so full. Nancy told me about it weeks later, embarrassed for me. I wasn't resting. I was in the garden, 10 feet away, pulling crabgrass with my bare hands. Small things. I know they're small. I told myself they were small so many times that I almost missed the shape they were making. Because here's what I understand now that I didn't understand then. They weren't separate. They weren't stress. And they weren't an adjustment. Each one was a fence post. And a person doesn't set fence posts unless they already know where they intend to run the fence. Diane was my only daughter. I had one other child, my son David, who lived in Oregon and called on holidays and meant well from a great distance. which is its own kind of not being there. So it was Diane and Gregory in my house, and Diane and Gregory's two children, Nancy, 17, quiet and watchful, and little Thomas, 9, who still hugged me around the middle like I was a person and not a household inconvenience. By the time I found the envelope in the mail that changed everything, I already knew, somewhere below where I let myself look, that those small moments had not been an accident. They had been practice. It was a county envelope, pale green, the kind that never brings good news, only bills and reassessments. I opened it standing at the mailbox, because at my age, you learn that mail can't hurt you worse for being read outside. It was a property tax notice. And the first thing I saw, before I saw anything else, was the higher number. My taxes had nearly doubled. For a widow on a fixed income, a doubled tax bill is not a piece of paper. It's a cold hand on the back of your neck. I stood there in my slippers doing math. I couldn't make come out right. Then I read the second thing. The owner names printed at the top of the notice. Gregory Ellison, Diane Ellison. Not Margaret, not Raymond's widow, not the woman who planted the walnut tree. I read it 4 times. I decided it was a mistake. Of course it was a mistake. A clerk had fat-fingered something, mixed up the refinance, dropped my name off a form. These things happen. I'd driven to the county building plenty of times over the years for exactly these kinds of nothing errors. Raymond used to say the county recorder's office was where paperwork went to tell the truth on you. So I got dressed properly, and I drove down to the recorder's office to fix my tax bill. That is the only reason I was there. A tax bill. I want you to understand that I did not go looking for a betrayal. I went to correct a clerical error so I could afford my own house. The clerk was a patient young woman named Beverly, with reading glasses on a beaded chain. I explained about the tax notice, the wrong names, the exemption I'd lose. She typed my address. She pulled the record up on her screen, and I watched her face do a small thing. A pause. A tightening that told me before her words did. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "the most recent recorded instrument on this parcel is a quitclaim deed. Filed in March." She turned the screen a little toward me, the way you turn a plate toward someone to show them there's a hair in it. "It conveys the property from Margaret Ellison, an individual, to Gregory and Diane Ellison as joint tenants." "That can't be right," I said. "I never signed a deed. I signed refinance papers." Beverly looked at me for a moment over the beaded glasses. She had, I think, seen this before. "Do you have a copy of what you signed?" she asked gently. I thought of the blue folder going down the hall, snapping shut, never coming back. "No," I said. "He kept it." She printed the quitclaim and slid it across the counter. There was my signature, my real signature, my own hand under a paragraph I had never read, giving my house away. And there, where the owner's name should have said Margaret Ellison the way it had for 38 years, my name was simply gone, signed off, handed over. My name was missing from my own deed, and I had put it there myself. Beverly watched me hold that page. Then she said the sentence that ended the person I had been that morning and started the person I would have to become. "Mrs. Ellison, before you do anything else, before you go home, before you say a word to anyone in that house, you need to call your attorney, today." I asked her why. I asked what could be so urgent about a piece of paper I'd already signed. And she said, "Because a deed isn't the last word on who owns a house. Sometimes it's not even the first." I didn't understand her yet, but I was about to. Raymond's attorney was a man named Walter Prine. He and Raymond had known each other 40 years. Walter did the legal, Raymond did the land. And between them, they'd sorted out half the property lines in the county over coffee that was mostly an excuse to sit down. I hadn't seen Walter since the funeral. When I called and said the words, "quit claim," and "my daughter and my name is gone," he said, "Come now, Margaret, bring whatever you have." What I had was a green tax notice, and a printed deed with my own signature on it, like a confession. But there was one more thing, and I almost didn't bring it. In the bottom drawer of Raymond's roll-top desk, the drawer I hadn't opened in 2 years, because opening it felt like waking him, there was a fat manila envelope with my name on it, in his blocky surveyor's print. I'd known it was there. I'd been afraid of it the way you're afraid of a letter from someone you've lost. I took it off the shelf where it had sat unopened, and I brought it too. Walter's office smelled like paper and lemon oil. He put on his glasses, laid the quitclaim on the blotter, and read it without a single change in his face. Then he did something that undid me a little. He smiled. "Margaret," he said, "did Raymond ever tell you what he did with the house in 2016? I said no. Raymond handled the house. I handled everything else. That was our arrangement, and I'd never had cause to question it. Walter opened the manila envelope I'd carried in like it was a bomb and slid out a bound document. On the front, in careful type, the Ellison Family Living Trust, and in the corner, in Raymond's own blocky hand, a date and his initials, R.E., the 11th of April 2016. In 2016, Walter said, Raymond deeded your home into this trust. You are the sole trustee. You have complete control of it for as long as you live. When he did that, the house stopped being owned by Margaret, the individual, and started being owned by the trust. He let that sit. Then he tapped the quitclaim. Which means, he said, that when you signed this in March, you signed as Margaret, the individual. And Margaret, the individual, hasn't owned this house since 2016. You gave Gregory and Diane exactly what you had to give. Nothing. I sat very still. So the deed. The deed conveys heir, Walter said. You can't give away what you don't hold. The trust holds the house. The trust names you. Their recorded quitclaim is a cloud on the title, and we will clear it. But it never moved one brick of that house out of your control. I looked at Raymond's initials in the corner. That surveyor's date. A paper without a date is a rumor. He'd been telling me something for years, and I'd only thought it was a saying. But here's what turned my stomach cold, and it's the reason Beverly told me to hurry. There's more, Walter said, and his voice went quieter. When your daughter and her husband refinanced, the lender ran a title search. And the title search found the trust, which is why he pulled another page. The home equity line of credit Gregory applied for in April has been sitting frozen. $200,000 he tried to borrow against your house. The title company flagged the defect. The trust stopped it before it started. I understood then. This was not one bad decision made in one bad night. This was not a refinance that went sideways. Walter, I said, how long has he been trying? And Walter looked at me the way you look at someone before you tell them the floor is older than they thought. Margaret, why do you think Raymond set up the trust in 2016? Gregory came to him that year. Wanted to put the two of them on the deed for the estate taxes, he said. For efficiency. Raymond said no, came straight to me, and we moved the house somewhere Gregory couldn't reach it. Raymond didn't want to worry you, he said. Walter's voice caught, just slightly. He said you'd give people the benefit of the doubt until there was nothing left. And he wanted you to have something left. 10 years. The coffee mugs, the thermostat, the porch, the moving in to save money. It had never been about saving anything. It had been the last step of a plan that started while Raymond was still alive to stop it. I did not cry. I want you to know that. I looked at the date in the corner of that trust, and I felt something happen inside me that I can only describe honestly. I stopped being hurt, and I started being clear. Walter, I said, tell me what I'm allowed to do, and then I'll decide what I'm going to do. He nodded, like Raymond might have nodded. Good, because I can prepare every document in the world, Margaret. Only you can sign one. We worked past the office lights coming on. The first thing was my name. Walter drafted the action to clear the false quit claim from the record and put me back on the title where I'd legally been all along. When this records, it's public, he warned. Anyone who looks will see it, including them. I asked the only question that scared me, whether proving I still owned my house could somehow cost me the house. He said no. I said, do it. He dated the corner. I signed my own hand this time, giving nothing away. But putting my name back in the daylight meant something I hadn't thought through. Margaret, Walter said slowly, sliding the loan page toward me again. The second this records, his lender sees the trust too. Which means we should finish what his own bank already started. So the loan came next. Walter wrote to the lender, as trustee, that Gregory had no authority to borrow a dime against property he didn't own. 200,000, he said, gone, out of his reach for good. I asked whether Gregory could just carry it into a different bank down the road. No, the trust was recorded now. Every title search in the county would trip over it. And that answer raised the next one on its own, the ugly one I didn't want to ask. If he'd wired himself that deep into the house, where else had he quietly stitched his name? Everywhere, it turned out. The homeowner's insurance, the utilities. An emergency contact line he'd added to my own accounts back in February and called household efficiency. One by one, I had him taken off. Each call ended in a small, clean click, and each click was a fence post pulled back out of my own yard. But pulling posts only fixed the present tense. It said nothing about the day. I wouldn't be here to answer the phone, and that was the one page Walter had been holding back for last. He laid it down gently. An update to the trust itself. Under the old terms, if anything happened to me, the house went to Diane outright. This revision sent it somewhere else to my grandchildren. Nancy and Thomas held in trust in equal shares until each turned 25, a neutral trustee managing it, and Nancy named to oversee it once she was grown. Not to Diane, not to Gregory, not ever. I held the pen over the line, and my hand would not move, because I wasn't looking at a document. I was looking at Diane at 6 years old in a yellow raincoat, jumping the puddle at the end of the driveway, laughing so hard she got the hiccups. The daughter. Not the woman who'd boxed up my mugs. Walter didn't rush me. Take whatever time you need, Margaret. I'll be honest about that minute, because you were probably yelling at me through the screen. Sign it, Margaret. I could almost hear you. But a mother's hand is a heavy thing to move against her own child, even a child who stood in her kitchen and called it the household. Then I thought of Nancy on the stairs, 17 years old, watching what a family does when it believes nobody is keeping the records. I signed. Raymond's daughter would not inherit the house she'd tried to take. Raymond's granddaughter would, and the truth that came with it. Walter capped his pen. There's one more thing you should read before you go, he said. Raymond left it with the trust. He asked me to give it to you only if this drawer ever had to be opened. He handed me a single folded page and left the room so I could open my husband's handwriting alone. The paper was ordinary. Ruled notebook paper, the kind Raymond kept in the truck. He'd written it in pencil and pressed hard, the way he did when a thing mattered. Margaret, it began. If Walter is handing you this, then something I hoped I was wrong about turned out to be true, and I'm sorry I'm not there to sit with you while you read it. I want to tell you what I know and what I don't, because you deserve to know which is which. I don't know what happened. I don't know who did what, or when, or how bad it got. I'm not a fortune teller, and I won't pretend to be one now. I could be wrong about all of it. I hope I am. Here's what I do know. I know that I watched, for years, the way certain people looked at this house when they thought no one was measuring. And measuring is the one thing I'm good at. I know that you would rather give a person the benefit of the doubt 100 times than protect yourself once. It's the best thing about you, and it's the thing that keeps me up at night. So I put the house somewhere safe. not to decide anything for you. I would never, but so that you'd still have a choice on the day you needed one. That's all a good survey ever does, Margie. It doesn't tell you where to build. It just tells you the truth about where the lines really are, so nobody can move them on you in the dark. Please don't mistake peace for surrender. They can look alike from the porch, but they are not the same country. Ask every question, read every page. And sign only what gives you rest. You always knew where our lines were, I just wrote them down. All my love, and then some, Raymond. I did cry then. But not the way I'd cried at the funeral, hollowed out and alone. I cried. The way you cry when someone you lost turns out to have left a light on for you in a hallway. You were afraid to walk down. He hadn't known. He hadn't predicted. He'd only worried and loved me enough to leave me a choice instead of a set of instructions. I folded the letter and put it in my purse next to the deed. My husband hadn't saved me. He'd done something better. He'd made sure I could save myself. I dried my face, and I drove home to the house that had been mine the whole time. They found out the way I'd chosen for them to find out, not from me, but from the record. The certified letter from Walter's office arrived on a Thursday. Diane opened it at the kitchen table, and I watched her read the words, "Cloud on title, cleared, trust confirmed, sole trustee Margaret Ellison," and I watched her face go from confusion to understanding to something that finally, after months, looked like fear. Gregory came home an hour later. He'd already had a call from his lender about the frozen line of credit. He walked into my kitchen, holding his phone like a weapon that had misfired. "Margaret," he said, in the warm, measured voice, "I think there's been a big misunderstanding, and I really think if we all sit down—" "Sit down, then," I said. He didn't expect that. He sat. "You told me it was refinance paperwork," I said. "It was a deed. You had me sign away a house I didn't legally own, so it gave you nothing, and then you tried to borrow $200,000 against it. Do I have that right?" "You're being emotional," Diane said. "You're twisting it. We were trying to help you. You'll always have a room here, Mom. Nothing was ever going to change that." There it was again. The line she'd said the first night, the one I'd swallowed. "You'll always have a room here, in my house, offered to me like charity." She said it the way you'd reassure a boarder. I set my hands flat on the wooden table Raymond built, and I did not raise my voice. "Diane," I said, "this was never your room to promise me." Gregory tried again. "Margaret, legally, if you just—" "Legally," I said, "the house has been in a trust since 2016. You knew there was a trust. Your bank found it. You had me sign that deed anyway, hoping I wouldn't check." I checked. I looked at him steadily. "You do this for a living, Gregory. So you know exactly what you did. Let's not insult Raymond's table by pretending otherwise. He had no warm voice left for that. He just looked at the phone in his hand. Then I turned to my daughter, because this was the part that mattered. "Diane, he may have drawn up the papers, but you're the one who sat in my kitchen and called this place the household like I was a tenant. You boxed up my mugs. You turned Nancy from church away at my own door and told her I was resting. You let him call my house empty while I was still living in it. He built the fence. But you handed him the posts one at a time, and you smiled while he set them." She started to cry. "I never wanted you to lose your home, Mom." "I didn't," I said. "That's the only reason we're still speaking." Diane's phone lit up on the table between us. My son's name on the screen, David, calling from Oregon. She grabbed it like a life raft. She'd texted him that morning. I found out later, certain her brother would line up beside her against me. She put it to her ear, and I watched the raft sink. "David, thank God. Will you please talk to your mother?" She stopped. Whatever he said, the color left her face. She held the phone away from her ear, and my son's voice came out of it, small and steady and furious, all the way from 2,000 miles off. "Diane, you tried to take Mom's house. I already talked to Nancy. I know what you did. Don't you ever call me for cover on this. Not this one. The line went dead. Diane set the phone down like it had scorched her palm. She had walked into that kitchen with an ally in her pocket, and she'd set him back down a stranger. Gregory stood up, gathering himself for one more angle, and I stopped him with one sentence, quietly. There's a repayment arrangement for the taxes you triggered, and the exemption I lost. And there's a date by which this household will be your own address, somewhere else. Walter will send it, in writing, dated. You're throwing us out, Gregory said. No, I said. I'm going home. You just happen to be standing in it. Diane reached for my hand across the table. Mum, say you forgive me, please. And here is the thing I'm still not sure I did right, and I'll let you be the judge, because I've turned it over 100 times. I did not take her hand. Not that day. I said the truest thing I had. Some apologies need to be held a while before they can be answered, Diane. I'm not closing the door on you. I'm just not going to pretend it never happened, so you can feel better tonight. That's not forgiveness. That's just me disappearing again. I stood, and I walked to the front door, and I opened it, my door, in my hand, and I held it open until they understood the conversation was finished. The lock got changed the next morning, while they were both at work. Some people will tell you I should have told them to their faces first. Maybe. But I had spent 40 years explaining myself to that table. I was done explaining. The locksmith was named Frank. He was kind, and when he handed me the new key, he said, "There you go, ma'am." Only fits the hand that owns it now. I have never in my life liked the weight of a key so much. Nancy found me in the garden 2 weeks later. They'd moved into a rental across town. By then the arrangement held, the taxes were being repaid. The house was quiet, in a way I'd forgotten it could be. But Nancy still had a key to my heart, if not my door, and she used it the honest way. She just showed up. No text from her mother first. No agenda. She was carrying 2 grilled cheese sandwiches wrapped in a paper towel, a little burnt on one side, and 2 cans of the orange soda she knew I kept for Thomas. I made lunch, she said. It's kind of bad. I only know how to make grilled cheese. We sat on the porch step, the crooked one Raymond never fixed. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't defend her parents, or ask if they were getting the house back, or wonder aloud about money. She ate her burnt sandwich and looked at the walnut tree. Then she said, "Grandma, I heard what Mum said, that first night, about you always having a room here." She picked at the paper towel. "I was on the stairs. I heard it. And I didn't say anything because I was 17 and scared, and I didn't know how you're supposed to stop your own parents from doing something wrong." She looked at me. "But I knew it was wrong. I want you to know I knew." I put my arm around her. 17 years old, and already braver than the grown-ups in that story. "You didn't fail me, sweetheart," I said. "You were a child in a house full of adults who should have known better. The only thing you owe me is exactly what you just did. You told the truth to my face. That's the whole job. Most grown people never manage it." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Grandpa would have hated all this," she said. "No," I said, and I surprised myself by laughing. "Grandpa would have measured it, dated it, and filed it in triplicate. That's how he loved people. He left everything where the truth could find it later. I didn't tell her yet that the house would be hers, and Thomas's one day, held safe until they were grown. That was a conversation for a calmer year. But I looked at her burnt grilled cheese and her honest face, and I understood that Raymond had been right about lines. He'd written ours down. And now there was a girl on my porch step who would grow up knowing that a house is not the thing you take from people. It's the thing you keep safe for them. "Come help me water the tree," I said. And she did. Diane and Gregory are in their rental now, and the taxes are coming back to me on a schedule, a little each month. The house sale they'd been quietly planning never happened, because there was never a house they could sell. The frozen loan stayed frozen and then died on the vine. My son David, in Oregon, calls more now. He heard the whole story from Nancy, not from Diane, and something in him woke up. Last month he said Mom's house on the phone without thinking about it. When I come out, I'll stay at Mom's house. And I had to sit down, because it had been so long since anyone in my family called it that out loud. The trust sits in Walter's fireproof drawer, and a copy sits in mine, in the bottom of Raymond's roll-top desk where I'm no longer afraid to look. Nancy will oversee it one day. She doesn't know that yet. She'll know when she's ready. I planted marigolds along the front walk this year. And yes, I'll say it plainly, both things are true. I planted the marigolds, and I kept the new locks. A person can do both. Beauty at the front door and a bolt that only fits her own hand. That's not bitterness. That's just a woman who finally learnt the difference. I'm alone in the house now, most days, but alone is not the same as abandoned, and I chose this quiet on purpose. I have Walter's number, and Nancy's grilled cheese, and Frank the locksmith who waves when he drives by, and a walnut tree that Raymond planted the year our daughter was born, still standing, still ours. In the evenings, I sit in Raymond's chair by the window, where he used to do his figures, and I keep a small notebook on the sill. Most nights I don't write anything. Some nights I do. The night the marigolds first bloomed, I wrote one line, and I want to leave you with it, because it's the truest answer I have to everything that happened. Sometimes dignity does not arrive with shouting. Under it, in my own hand, I wrote, "My name went missing from the deed for one afternoon." Raymond made sure the truth had never left the record. Then I closed the notebook, and I turned off the lamp, and through the window I could see the porch light I leave on. Now, not for anyone in particular. Just so the house has one warm light in it, kept by the woman whose name was on it all along.